The biggest change to campus is the gradebook. Now, the gradebook was converted just really to make it easier to use on different types of devices, so you weren't reliant on having to use Java. So the new gradebook looks very similar to the old one. It kind of has this kind of grid scale look to it. And really the biggest difference is just kind of that the fact that everything that all the settings, the things that you've used before are all kind of on the same page. So it kind of gets used, it takes some time getting used to that. You'll notice it has like this little blue settings box up here. Every time there's an arrow, that means you can kind of click on it and it'll open up settings. Same thing over here if you wanted to kind of hide grade totals here and then open them up again, you can do that as well. So I wanted to look at the settings here because just like in previous years, you're going to have to set up your gradebook just like we did in the past. The only difference is now the settings are kind of in a different spot. It's really the same functions you'll have to do. Grading scales, this is just kind of our district preset grading scales. You should not have to touch these at all unless you have some kind of different class where you have to add your own grading scale to it. The other thing is using grade calc options. This is one you are going to have to play around with. This is where you're just kind of setting your grading scale. There's kind of a nice fill calculation type up here. So all you'll have to do is click on in progress grade and then go to the middle high. If you're using a weighted categories, and I'll talk about categories in a different video, then make sure that you're selecting that for each one that you're using a weighted category grading system. The score is percent value. I don't think this really applies to anyone. This is where they actually give a score based on the percent of each assignment. So I would strongly recommend not using that unless you really know what kind of grade you're looking to get with that statistic. And then by basically filling it here, it should populate. Now this is from last year, so I already had my grades kind of in, but yours will probably be blank. Once you use the fill function, it'll actually do that. Set that for each one of your classes and also for each of your quarter classes. And then but just by hitting save, that'll save that those options that you changed. I would always recommend going back into it, just double checking, making sure that all of the quarters for each category filled correctly. Since you're here, you might as well work on your final grade for a year-long class if that applies to you. So basically how you do that, there's a little checkbox right next to each of class. That's just if it's a composite grade. So by selecting it and deselecting it, basically it'll open up this little category down here. I'm going to do it on a new one just so you can kind of see what it looks like. So if, yours will probably look like this, blank first, and then all you're going to do is click on the box. It'll add kind of the composite grading calculations. So you're just going to add, in this case we have 4 quarters. So you'll want to add 4 of them, and then you'll just select which ones you'll actually be using, like which progress grades you'll want to calculate. So do each quarter, and then when you have it, since I'm using the 4th quarter, it won't pop up obviously, but then you just kind of add the weight there. So if it's a quarter, obviously 25% for each. I'll just add that. And then basically that's it. And then it'll basically calculate your final grade as well. So it's kind of nice to do right off the bat. So when it comes around to June, you don't have to worry about it. It's already set up. Again, always double check. At the end of the year, you should probably go back in just to double check that everything worked correctly. Again, always calculate a couple students to make sure everything worked correctly. So that is basically it for setting up your gradebook. Again, if you use categories, look for the category video, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on how to use those.